Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Perspective on Thunder Radio and LightTube. Tara-Lee and I, we've got a great guest in the studio right now, Mr. Jack Bailey.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks
Jack,
for being here.
Little intro here. Jack is a 1990 graduate of Vanderbilt and went on to get his law degree there. And then he is partner and co-founder of Bailey and Southwell. I think, we'll talk about that a little bit. Jack and his wife Nancy have been married for 18 years and have 6 children. And all 6 of them are actually bouncing around the mall right now. So finding that some
a very safe environment.
I've got the whole campaign team here with me this morning.
Well, welcome on the show, Jack. It's good to have you.
I appreciate it. Loved being here.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested. Jack is running for Congress. He's running for the Republican seat ticket, currently held by Lincoln Davis, a Democrat. And Tara-Lee is a big fan of Lincoln Davis right now.
I am a moderate.
Well, let's put you on the stand here, Terry. That's what I'd like to do. Now, I'm
listen to Deuce back there.
Greg,
this is what happens. I'll just do this.
To answer your question, I'm a guy who grew up in Middle Tennessee. I'm one of 6 kids. Grew up with a single mom and learned, I guess, the value of hard work and independence pretty early. Going to Vanderbilt, I actually I'm not the rich kid from Williamson County. I joined the National Guard when I was 17. Went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. Served in Gulf War I up at Fort Campbell. But was able to go to Vanderbilt undergrad and law school. Spent 2 years studying the Bible in seminary in between the two. Practiced as an attorney for a short period of time, but had been a small business owner for the last 9 years.
What type of business do you have, Jack?
We are an advisory firm for small and mid-sized businesses. We call ourselves the investment bankers for the little guys. So when on one side of the table you're going to have Lehman Brothers and their billions of dollars of capital and backing, you've got the small guys who want help. They'll call Bailey Southwell and we'll protect them.
Okay. That's what I thought was interesting. That was my big thing is what do you think? Of course, I thought we deregulated way too much in regards to investment bankers and things like that. I went on your website and I looked at it, and tell me this is two-pronged. One is, what do you think about the regulation they're trying to get passed now and everything? And the second thing is, do you think people might look at you as an investment banker, even though you're here in Middle Tennessee, a part of the Wall Street people because you're in that banking? And to some people, investment banking is kind of unknown and scary, and they associate you maybe with like a Goldman Sachs or something like that.
I think if they saw me working with our clients in the coal mines in West Virginia or the manufacturing facilities in Upper East Tennessee, I think they would know we're somebody different. Again, we protect Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers, J.P. Morgan. They are on Wall Street, and I've spent time on Wall Street. But what I do and what we do is we represent the small guys, protect them from Wall Street. And we're the Wall Street. We're Main Street guys protecting people from Wall Street giants. So. My hope is that I'm not going to be swept up in that, but it's certainly not reasonable to make that assumption. Again, what we do is we protect from Wall Street.
What are your thoughts on this current legislation?
Absolutely,
has been real involved with that. The Democrats have tried to slam the Republicans as being opposed to this current legislation and being friendly with Wall Street. That's what's going on. What are your thoughts on the legislation and what it really needs to do?
Okay, in this case, I have not read the bill, but I will tell you my general view of what I've been hearing is that anytime you create utilities out of Wall Street, that's a bad thing for America, and it's a bad thing for our economy. And when I say utilities, what I'm worried about is putting the same, at the end of the day, our electric companies, our utility companies, they're essentially, I would say appendages of the federal government. They're limited in how much they can do, what they invest in, and so forth. My view of what I'm hearing, again, not having read the bill, is that we're going to essentially turn Wall Street into a number of utilities. And I think that's bad for all of us. Now, additional problems are, one of the main problems in assessing the problems for our existing recession is understand what the problem was. And one of the major problems of the recession was regulation. They were overseeing that regulation. Terry, I'll let you ask many follow-up questions you want to. You're coming into my ballpark on this, Terry. Is one of the problems, there are numerous problems, was a failure of regulation. So what we're going to be doing is putting those regulators have a more responsible position to to regulate again, like they're going to solve the problems. They
did
will
such a
never
good
solve
job the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's
but
put them
they
in
did-
charge of it again.
But wait, for several years, Congress allowed deregulation. For instance, the derivatives and things like that. Where
Sure.
with AIG, what happened with AIG?
Right.
If the regulations were in place, that never would have happened. Those derivatives of how they were selling a product but not putting money back if that product failed to reimburse, to pay for that.
Are these the same regulators that didn't catch Bernie Madoff? I'm curious about that.
Well, but I think too, though, is it was a culture that
Right.
was created of let business run rampant.
Okay.
And I'm not saying total regulation,
Right.
but I think
Terry,
there needs to be regulation.
I think my question for you is, where were you in 2002 and 2003 in Congress? And you may have been there. I just missed you when the Republicans were attacking Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They were WorldCom at the same time of WorldCom. They were accounting nightmares. They were pulling a heist on the American people. That's part of the federal government, not technically, but in fact they were. Part of the greatest problems, with Barney Frank, with Chris Dodd, what they told banks through Fannie Mae, the enablers of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, was that you have to give money to people who can't afford houses. That's a government regulatory failure that put us in the position we're in.
But that goes back all the way to 1979 with Jimmy Carter.
Absolutely, the Community Reinvestment Act. Absolutely,
and every president in Congress since then, pretty much. Now
it's true. Wait, and I will say, Terry, and this is important, that to me, all these aren't a Republican and Democrat issue. This is a conservative issue. When I say I'm a businessman standing up, I'm standing up against politicians. I'm standing up against business as usual in Washington. Well, there's a lot of blame to spread around. But let me on the bill as well, if I can add on one thing, is one of the essential problems we had is the belief, and this was an accurate belief, by the way, is that the investment banks on Wall Street, and I saw this face to face, they knew they were going to get bailed out. They were bailed out.
Right.
The federal government, whether it was Chrysler, whether it was Illinois banks in the early '80s, whether it was S&L, whether it was long-term capital management in the late '90s, they knew they were going to get bailed out. So when I look at the existing bill and some of the things that I've seen more of the government standing behind companies that our biggest problem here, Terry, our biggest regulatory failure here is that these banks had a reasonable reason to assume that they were going to be bailed out.
But my understanding, and of course, I think you brought up the best point about all this. Really what we're saying is almost speculation because we haven't seen the bill, we haven't seen the final product.
Yes.
But my understanding is that's why the Republicans and Democrats have finally come together on this. Banks will fail. We will not bail out banks again. We will not do the AIGs and the things like that. When I say ever, again, I hate to say
my understanding of that it's in there is that they actually have a fund. And again,
there's $50 billion set aside as a
for bailouts.
Fund. And that's what the Republicans have the biggest problem about is this bailout fund that, again, there's no penalty if you fail. If a bank fails, let their assets be bought by competitors. Let them reassume, and keep moving.
And that's the point, Greg. Is there's no possibility that the federal government can regulate those banks as well as its own investors can.
Right. We
cannot compete with the talent. The SEC will never be able to compete with the intellectual brain power and the experience on Wall Street. Because if for pay differentials, whatever reason, is if you are a top guy, you want to go to Goldman Sachs. You don't want to go to the SEC. So point is that the investors should be able to oversee their own companies in a way that the regulators never will be able to. So if those investors know that their investment is at stake, they will be so much more vigilant than any governmental entity. What we need to do, again, is open up the free market and allow the free market to compete.
But as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, but isn't that what the board of directors should have been doing all along?
Oh, I'm not saying there's no place for improvement, Terry. Let's be very clear on this.
That's what's so challenging
but
about
these board of directors, it's important to know, they knew that the bailout was there. That was the problem.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Responsible companies have real board of directors.
I agree.
That will stand up and
I agree. It should not be a country club. It should not be a good old boys network. I support that, Terry.
And I think that's one of the problems we
Agreed.
have. But